Okay, so yesterday we were able to sew in all of the groupings here. So this is basically the entire text block all in place. We're now in a position to actually think about sort of taking this all apart. What I did a little while ago was just loosen these knots at the top so that I could take these apart easily. The issue we've got is all the length of the string is obviously above this up this side, above the bench, and the string's only held underneath by a knot, so we're going to need to obviously put boards on both sides of the book, so we kind of need an equal length of string either side. So basically this is going to have to be pulled down through the threads, and this was why before we actually started work I greased the string a little bit just with some coconut butter, just to make it a little more slippery. So I'm hoping that this will be a relatively easy process. Overall, this, if you compare doing this with the method that I used for Granville Sharp's little book, which used sort of metal spikes, this has been relatively easy. Obviously, I've had to actually do all the sewing in situ here, whereas the spikes, enabled me to actually, in effect, put gatherings onto the spikes. But here, of course, it's all closed, so I actually had to bend over and do a lot of close work. But that really wasn't too much of an issue. Okay, so I can get rid of these bricks. They've done their job now. So there we go. So if I lift this up, we've obviously got this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt, this is where we'll see whether this is a viable method or not. What I'm going to do is see if I can actually pull this string through, and I'm going to experiment with just twisting it a little bit as I pull, and I'm hoping that it's going to come through without has now done its job. Okay. So this left-hand one is probably going to be the most difficult because this was where I started the sewing. So this is where I sort of tied a reasonably... Oh, yeah, there we go. That's what we wanted. There you go. So now you've got this sort of... That's what I wanted, a nice length of... There. Now let's do the same here. These next ones I'm hoping will be... This appears to be even though this is resisting me, you can trust me that this is a lot less difficult than those metal spikes were when doing Granville Sharp's little book. Now this one is giving a little more resistant just because there's a slight twist in the top there. don't want to do, under any circumstances, is actually pull any thread through the ball. Ooh, there we go. All right, that's looking good. This one. Okay. So careful just to get a fingernail under, and what that does is it just stops the blade from actually being sucked through the board as I pull. All right. So we now have a good equal length back and forth, and now I'm just going to trim these. So those are now free. So what I should now be able to do, there we go. Oops. There's a knot at this end. All right. There we go. We have a serviceable text block. Still a bit of looseness this way, which is of course desirable because we want to make sure that we get this edge as flat as possible before we do the final gluing and adding of the fabric. But there we go. So what I'm now going to do with this is, if I bring this up, shakiness of the camera there. What I'm now going to do is situate this between the boards so that I can do the gluing of the text block with an overlay of fabric. Now, because this is a reasonably large, or tall, not really large, but tall book, now let's take the bolts out of my board. So instead, I'm going to have to use weights to hold this in situ. Just to So, this is going to be my work surface. So, next step will be, as I've done, with many other restorations that are on this channel, I'm going to glue this surface, put a lot of glue down. That's going to sort of really have the text block become one cohesive whole. And then these strings will be available for us to actually reattach the boards, and we'll have quite a bit to do to think about what leather we use for the boards, etc. But that's what's going to be done here. So that's the next step. Okay, so I've just adjourned down into my other sort of workspace here, and I've started to do the second major phase of gluing, which is to really soak the ends of the gatherings here before laying on this fabric that I've got here on the side. So this is really the second opportunity and final opportunity for, if there are any pages that are not particularly well attached inside, this glue will sort of soak downward and inward, and that will, you know, help them to adhere under the pressure of this board that's sort of squeezing here. So there was a bit of a lesson learnt actually from the previous gluing, which is, as you know, for some of these gatherings, what I noticed was a bit of staining coming up from where the glue had been, and I realised what that was tannin from the original leather binding. So when this book was originally bound, the leather spine was glued directly onto the text block, and that leather obviously then sort of decayed and disintegrated over the years. And as I was sort of taking the text block apart to do the rebuild, sometimes, you know, a sort of leathery, gluey mixed would remain, and I thought to myself, you know what, you know, if it ain't broke, why, you know, don't fix it. You know, maybe I should just leave that and it'll help the overall adherence. Now that was a mistake, because what happened was this glue sort of merged with the old glue while it was still wet, and the leather tannin started to sort of soak in. So in effect, the text block started to become one great big old-fashioned, you know, chemistry sort of chromatography experiment, and sort of take the dyes of the leather down just a little distance into the paper. So that was, you know, it's barely visible, but I guess the message I wanted to convey is, if you have a situation where you're removing leather, you know, spine, you have to remove it completely and really start over. You can't leave little bits of it, because you're just laying yourself open to that kind of staining from then sort of advancing in. So what I'm going to do is sort of pad this down, and then I'm going to sort of put holes in the second on the right hand side now. Obviously I put a hole here on the left and fish through the second of the cords in each case, which I'll just do here. So, like so. Like so, and I'll do that 7 times up the spine, like so, and then just, this will just sort of set in situ, so we'll do the rest in a second. Also wanted just to talk a little bit about the boards themselves. So if I just sort of back away over here they are. So as you can see, very sort of degraded sort of leather, heavily bumped, heavily foxed and stained sort of paste down here. This particular board, even leather in even worse condition. What's interesting though is we do have the signatures here, including General Dana's, so that we want to try and preserve. But eventually we're going to have to attach the text block, which means we're going to have to drill holes. Now, I've no great desire to keep this leather at all. It's just too degraded. So what I'm going to do here is just put the knife in and just remove the leather. One good reason for removing this leather, if you don't want to keep it, is it does add a thickness to the board, and you want the board's thickness to be kind of in proportion to the book's thickness. And this isn't a thick book, it's a tall book, but it's not a thick book. It's only about 1.25 inches, maybe 3. So, you know, we're going to be putting a new covering of probably a nice marbled paper with some leather quartering on here. So putting leather over leather, particularly where it's degraded, probably isn't a good recipe. And the other thing is I want to actually see if I can see where the attachment points were for the original raised bands. You can see here, there's one, here's one, etc. So, you know, if there are already holes in these boards, I'd rather reuse those than, you know, kind of drill new ones. So I'm going to see if I can remove these bits of twine and reuse them. On a slightly more gross note, let's see if I can focus in more carefully on this. It's maybe tricky with this phone. Let's see if I can do this. It's struggling a little bit, maybe for the back here. Yeah, this app's not proving very helpful, but the point I'm trying to make is that if you look very closely, oh, there we go, you will see right there hairs. There, you can just see them right there. I think those are rodents' hairs. This board, bear in mind this is 400 years old, this board is made of a compaction of basically paper and board waste, and there's some animal hair in here as well, which is kind of rather gross. I don't know what animal it is. They look very short, so I suspect they're probably rats, but I'm really not sure. So anyway, I'm going to continue this process as well as finish up with doing this gluing, and then we'll let this text block rest overnight and dry thoroughly, and then we'll really then start to think about, okay, how do we want to attach the boards, and how do we want to design the covering. So this is now all set to rest for the night. Just leave that to dry. I did remove the leather from the board, so you can see we've just gotten back to this very sort of rough surface with all manner of strangeness sort of, yeah, in it. So there we go. So what I'm probably going to do in terms of inside is I do have some large sheets of reasonably nice paper which I can use to create some nice new paste downs, and it won't look particularly offensive if I sort of create in effect a slot that these signatures will show through. I don't want to disrupt this in any way. So that'll be the inside, and then on the outside we're going to have a nice marbled end paper that's coming in the mail, a nice marbled paper that'll be nice here, and we still have a choice to make on the leather for the quartering of the boards as well. So that'll be tomorrow's fun, and thank you very much.